How's it going, everybody? And welcome to your May 2021 horoscope for Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces rising. My name is Cam White. Thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'm super glad you guys can be here with me today. Before you jump to whatever sign you're going to watch today on this horoscope, let me just also preface by saying I do these monthly horoscopes week by week, so you can watch them in tangent with my weekly horoscope. So if this is like your first time on my channel and you don't know that I do a weekly horoscope, make sure you subscribe and so you can get notifications for the weekly horoscope. Anyway, as well, I write these specifically for the rising sign, but clearly y'all can do whatever you want and watch whatever zodiac sign you want. But this is focused for rising signs. Anyway, with that being said, I guess I will go ahead and see you guys on the other side. All right, so Cancer rising. So you're starting week 1 of May. You're going to be conversing and enjoying your connections with your friends a lot more at this point. However, you are going to need to kind of define some boundaries or draw some boundaries, especially if you're like helping out someone a lot, or if you're relying on someone a lot. There'll need to be kind of a clear distinction of how much you can and can't help. But at the same time, you're really going to be enjoying the more idealistic side of your friendships right now. So I would really recommend soaking it up. As Mercury enters Gemini, though, your mind is going to start to recluse, and you're going to become more focused on your inner machinations, your inner thoughts. You're also going to feel as if you can't explain yourself well enough. You're gonna feel like there's like a sense of self-sabotage with the way that you say things too. So your mind's just gonna be more focused on the things that you would rather not see. It's kind of like, when you notice something you don't want to notice, but it's all your mind can focus on. That's what Mercury and Gemini is really gonna kind of start, at least. But as we have Venus square Jupiter in the middle of the week, the big thing with Venus square Jupiter is you really can't have your cake and eat it too, in regards to, being able to get a lot with friendships and hang out with people and be connected in a group, and also, have abundant resources for yourself. This is very much like, give what you can, but don't give everything you can. However, as Venus enters Gemini, that's when you're going to start to feel like not so trusting of people, and feeling like you need to maybe recluse yourself. You're going to feel more so like, I need to not be out and about. And it's going to be, I think, a little bit easier to want to isolate yourself, and not necessarily always. For some people, it will feel kind of negative, but for others, it'll just be like a good time to get away. So then we start week 2, and there's going to be, again, a much more heightened inward draw, like, really kind of focusing maybe even on fears, things that, maybe you're scared of certain ideas, just a lot of, and that's just going to be really intensified. You might be a little bit paranoid at the moment. But the new moon in Taurus during week 2 is going to allow you to kind of settle out some energy, along with your social circles, like especially if things have been like just a lot going on there, you'll be able to kind of settle that energy down, which will be nice. I think that will calm down some of that anxiety. You'll be much more clear and mentally focused on the private areas of your life. Like things will start to, like you're really going to do a lot of like looking through some stuff, and a lot of things are going to reveal themselves, but it's not necessarily bad. Like you're looking in the parts of your chart that aren't comfortable. But there's a lot of ideas being affirmed. There's a lot of strength being affirmed, in my opinion. But again, that's why I said you're going to be much more clear and mentally focused on the private areas of your life. And that's just going to be much more of what kind of takes your mental capacity. Week 2, though, Jupiter's going to enter Pisces, and that pretty much initiates a really big new opportunity around traveling, spirituality, learning, expanding your mind. So this could be regarding higher education, getting some type of mentor, some type of teacher, going to a different country. Really, like you're really going to feel a different shift spiritually. Things are going to become way more influential for you. So that's really exciting. However, also in week 2, as Mercury enters shadow, context is going to start to kind of begin to build in more of the darker corners of your mind. Mercury's going to retrograde in a weird spot. And so this is just really where the context starts to begin. And so there's going to be some things that you reconsider, or some things that kind of happen that kind of, come out of the blue that you don't necessarily expect that you're going to have to reconsider, reevaluate. And then at the end of week 2, pretty much, Venus on Rahu, you're really going to feel like you want to dive deeper into discovering things that you enjoy. Maybe there's a new thing that you're starting to understand that you're getting really excited about, especially too if it's more private, like it's more something that you do on your own. And it's also very healing, like you're going to be really called to go in that direction. Then we get to week 3, and again, May's kind of a really crazy month. I didn't even preface that with this. I meant to say May's kind of a crazy month. In week 3, after Jupiter enters Pisces and everything, is really where you see it come alive. And so the beginning of week 3, you're going to start, feeling like you're able to make really strong connections with what you want. Understanding things things are really clicking. As the sun, the big thing too is that it's going to be doing something that you haven't done before, or exploring an area you've never been in before. So that's what's going to be cool about it. Is like, that's why I said clicking. It's like, it's all making sense now that you're familiar with it. But as the sun enters Gemini, you're going to be really starting to feel like you need to withdraw more. Take some time away to do some like self-reflecting, self-healing, focus more on personal matters. But then pretty much, when Mercury squares Neptune, that's where you're probably going to have a really big misunderstanding or misinterpretation regarding your beliefs and like your inner fears. And that inner, negative monologue that you might tell yourself. And there's something that, again, you could misinterpret something or misunderstand something that could really throw you off. So just expect to be kind of confused during week 3 when Mercury squares Neptune. And it's going to be like did I just see like that monster run across my room right now? Like, you'll be kind of tripping. So just don't worry about it. It'll come to pass, but pay attention. And then at the end of week 3, as Saturn stations retrograde, this is where you're going to have to really reconsider a lot of the boundaries with what's yours and what's not yours. The heavier side of Saturn, when it comes to responsibilities and obligations around your shared resources, other people's money, debts, inheritances, fears, change too. You're really going through a lot of change. This is where a lot of that weight really starts to add up, like where you really start to feel the pressure of that. Saturn station retrograde will have you reconsider boundaries with what's yours, what's not, the responsibilities, obligations, and understanding of more of the darker, more secret parts of your life. A lot of that's going to come up where you kind of have to, take a lot of maturity in areas where, you don't really have a choice. It's not necessarily fun, but this is just a very serious time. I think you're going to kind of go within, and there's going to be a lot of self-dialogue, a lot of understanding that has to take place in order for you to kind of make these switches. But I think as Jupiter enters Pisces too, there's just a lot of big opportunity that you'll see at this point. So I think you'll be really willing to take on more of these responsibilities. But week 3 is when a lot of that sets in. So then we get into week 4, and that's where really kind of everything, in my opinion, for the Cancer risings at least gets kicked off. Because we start the week off with the total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, and this is really going to highlight and bring up your work, your day-to-day routines, your health, your habits, and really bring it into perspective. And if you've been having issues or problems that you don't know where they're coming from, you're going to know by the time we get to this eclipse, like especially like health stuff. Like if you're feeling out of whack or something like that. And I think something's going to get revealed that you need to address. This is on the South Node. So this is going to be like, what needs to be released, what needs to be changed, your vision's changing. Maybe you had an ideal of what your schedule looked like, and now that ideal has changed, now that you've learned new information, and now it's just time to scrap the book, essentially. Venus is also going to square Neptune on week 4, and that's also going to confuse you. That's going to confuse you with what you want, and you may overdo things thinking that it's not enough. So my advice is like, don't overstimulate yourself, because it's also going to feel very confusing, like a lot of sensory overload. And I've been saying this with all the zodiac signs, but for the Cancer risings, it's going to be like, don't overdo the, don't turn the music too loud. Don't overstimulate yourself, because I think it's going to be kind of easy to overdo. And then as Venus conjoins Mercury, right? And Mercury stations retrograde, I think this is going to give you kind of the taste that you needed to decide whether or not a certain flavor of something is for you or not. And I think you're going to be able to get, and that's also too, in Mercury stations retrograde, you'll be going over everything that you've been learning and discovering over the past few weeks. But I think Mercury conjoining Venus as Mercury's retrograde is like, maybe the music's too loud at first, but you turn it down enough and it's just the right amount of volume to where maybe you enjoy it or something. Something really changes though with this Venus retrograde, not this Mercury retrograde for you guys. Like something that's been blocking, something gets, this is revealing things. This has to do with self-sabotage. This has to deal with the subconscious. But I think this is a flavor change. I think this is a palate change. I think you might go, oh, I didn't know it tasted like this. I'm gonna do something about that. And this might involve health things too. So then the Mercury retrograde happens and you'll just be going over that. And the big thing is at the end of week 4, you're going to really want to trust your gut with where to guide you. I haven't even talked about Mars being in Cancer really. So you'll feel a little bit more frustrated or aggravated this month than normal. But with that, you're going to really want to trust your gut and your intuition with where to guide you. And not necessarily, it's going to be easy to kind of, again, make irrational decisions. So just be a little bit more conservative with your, I think, actions. And that's kind of how we end the month. And like Gemini season looks really interesting. May looks really interesting for the Cancer risings. But I'll be seeing you next month. Scorpio risings, May 2021. You guys had a pretty crazy April, if I remember right. I don't remember. Yeah, a bunch of relationship stuff happened. Anyway, the craziness really doesn't stop going into May for you guys. Starting off on week 1, with Mercury squaring Jupiter to start the week off, that's going to put some relationships into check, especially if things are getting a little bit claustrophobic, like really kind of having to like, hey, it's nothing like mean. It's just kind of having to put a little check on it. But the Venus sextile Neptune is really going to ensure a fun feeling of romanticism with relationships, so that's something to enjoy. The thing is, though, as Mercury enters Gemini, that means your head, your mind is going to be much more wrapped up in other people's business, more dramatic, intense things, other people's money itself, fear. So try not to be like paranoid and really try to mind your own business. It's just Mercury in the 8th is going to be really addressing your blind spots too. Venus squaring Jupiter, though, in week 1, pretty much just means the dose makes the poison. So just be sure to remain temperate, especially with who you indulge in, what you do, what you take on. I think, there's a lot of expansion going on in your foundation, in your living situation. And so there's also a lot of good connections going on for the relationships. But again, just have a little bit of temperance. Venus is going to enter Gemini, though, at the end of week 1. And this is where you may feel caught up in more people's drama, which may or may not be fun, which, again, it's just going to be really easy to get caught up in other people's things, regardless if it's like it's someone needing your help, or you're going to be in the 8th house too, which is also the 8th house too. Like we're talking about transactions, debt, shared resources, money. It's pretty much money too. So, how you invest it, where it comes from, where it goes, etc., all that kind of stuff. Then we get into week 2 for you guys. And this is where it starts to get pretty spicy at this point. We start the week off with the Mercury North Node conjunction. So you're going to be really connected to, honestly, what I think is a much more intuitive part of yourself, but that intuition is much more logical. And you're really going to be drawn to like extremes of situations. Again, just a really hyper focus in that 8th house area. But the new moon in Taurus, that's going to allow some energy to settle down again in relationships, especially if things have been a little bit too much or there's just been a lot of things going on. This will get you, this will be able to help you get level footing, get more grounded in that area, cleanse things out a little bit. The Mercury Saturn trine also, I think this is like, you guys actually really benefit a lot out of this, because the Mercury Saturn trine is going to give you, in my opinion, the right words to understand an intense truth or to communicate one with a family member, especially when it comes to other people. Like this is just going to be one of those moments where, again, you're going to have to say something, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to say, but you'll say it really well, and you'll get the message will get across really, really well. But as Jupiter enters Pisces, this is what you get to look forward to. Procreation, recreation, just general creation in general, whether that's through arts, music, sex, self-expression, mostly too. That's all really going to kind of expand and create an opportunity, and it'll really start to shine and presenting kind of an opportunity to be creative in a lot more areas of your life. That really begins, and that's really going to be a thing that really goes on in 2022. But as Jupiter enters Pisces, we really get a good whiff of what's to come. So you'll really start to see the opportunity arise. But as Mercury enters shadow in week 2, right before the Mercury retrograde, as Mercury enters shadow, the context really starts to set and really starts to begin in regards to other people's possessions, shared resources, money, death. Also, this could involve some type of death, transition. All of that's going to be revealed in the next couple of weeks. But as Mercury enters shadow, that's when the context starts to get really laid out. And that's when you should really start paying attention to what is said, what is going on, any type of event that occurs. So starting week three for you guys is a little kind of common in one sense, but Venus is going to trine Saturn. So this kind of gives a solid line of connection and stability in regards to like shared resources and family and home life. Things really start working out here. But as the sun enters Gemini, I think you're going to be much more focused on your blind spots and being like, okay, what corners do I need to really look at here that I'm not paying attention to? And that's going to come up again because Mercury is going to square Neptune, which that's going to confuse you in terms of, confuse you though in terms of knowing what you're getting yourself into. Like you're going to be a little bit curious and go, whoops, I didn't mean to go a little bit this far. And there might be kind of this thinking you want something and then backing out of it because maybe it's not what you wanted. Maybe a realization occurs, but the Mercury square Neptune just your expectations will probably be wrong about something. So just keep that in mind. But as Saturn stations retrograde at the end of week 3, the new responsibilities and obligations of the home life and the family and your living situation that you've been really taking on, like that all really starts to set in, like the heavier side of it. Like, responsibility is cool when you're in charge, but then, it's kind of like you're the one that also has to deal with everything at the end of the day, right? Like being the captain of the ship is great until that ship goes down. And that's not to say that the ship's really going to go down here. However, Saturn is really angular for you guys, so it's just really prominent, and you're just really going to feel the weight of just taking on those responsibilities and having to kind of define boundaries and, figure out what lies ahead of you, I guess, in the home and the family life situation. Now, luckily for you guys, week 4 kind of turns around in a sense. I just feel like week 3 is very like real and raw, but week 4 things get a little bit better in one sense. Let's get there first, but it doesn't start that way. Starting the week off with total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, that's really going to highlight a drain or a potential expense suddenly coming up. And as everything's in Gemini, this is really going to be just kind of be prepared to really examine your losses and, tighten up things, right? Like it's kind of like when someone, declares bankruptcy, it's like, you consolidate your debt. That's a way I would analogize this is like, you might have an expense come up. So you might not be able to buy this or that. So you're just going to have to kind of readjust your position. But that this is an expense that you can kind of predict. So you kind of knew this was coming. This is all stuff that started last spring. It started last spring and then it went to last December and now it's coming back up again. So, just be prepared for all that. Venus is going to square Neptune. So this may leave you feeling like at the mercy, at the will of others, and feeling maybe overstimulated, being like overly involved with other people, overly connected. And so again, this might be like, you realize you might have taken too much. You might have drank. You realize you drank too much after you drank too much, right? There's no going back after it. So, just take your time, I guess, meshing yourself in with someone if that's what you're doing, because you're going to feel really overstimulated with how you involve yourself. But as Venus conjoins Mercury, while Mercury stations retrograde, mind you, so Venus is going to hit Mercury, Mercury is going to then go backwards. That's where you're really going to begin to re-examine your connections with others as information begins to be revealed. Some truth, some secrets, some things that maybe you didn't see before. You kind of get access into, the behind the scenes. And I think that's going to make you reevaluate your positions and your connections with other people. not necessarily in a bad way, but it's just more information, right? Information is neither good or bad. It's what what you do with it or what it means. But as we get to the end of the week, Mars is going to trine Neptune, which is going to give you really romanticized creativity in regards to finding some like spiritual healing. Like especially if you're needing to do any type of like healing, quote unquote. This would be a good time to do it if in a spiritual terms, like acupuncture or something like that. And which you'll probably need too, is things are going to get really intense, especially and really dramatic as you kind of go through this change, which May and Gemini season is always a weird time for you guys anyway. So that's what May looks like. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and see you guys next month. All right, Pisces, let's go ahead and get started with May, because May is kind of a weird month for you guys. Starting off the month, week 1, we're going to start the week with Mercury squaring Jupiter, which is pretty much going to leave you wanting to say less, like feeling like you can't properly express your ideas. So you want to be a little bit more like sturdy with your communication and understanding, not trying to go off out on a limb, because you'll want to keep it as concise as you want to. But again, you're not going to feel like you can really get it all out there. You will, however, be able to elaborate on things well and connect with others via communication. However, it's just kind of, you kind of have to like stick to your guns at points. Once Mercury enters Gemini, though, that's when you'll be able to be, for one, once Mercury enters Gemini, communication and expression will just be easier in general. But as Mercury enters Gemini for you guys, you're going to be much more mentally focused on the home and the family and trying to get yourself more mentally grounded. As we continue through the week, the Venus square Jupiter is going to give you a chance to enjoy some short distance traveling. However, if you keep it low key and not overdo it, like, if you try to go with a bunch of people, I don't think it's going to work that well, versus if you do something on your own, it might be okay. There's some type of short distance traveling communication thing that's good. Again, trying to get away mostly by yourself, but it's the dose makes the poison, right? But as Venus enters Gemini, that's where you're going to be much more focused on stimulating yourself in the home and enjoying more of your private life. So, you kind of get to do a little fun little activity, and then things kind of just get more private again. Then we get to week 2, and week 2 is really where things get really awesome for you guys. In a lot of different ways. Like, again, this is kind of a weird time, because there's a lot of good, and also not necessarily there's a lot of bad, but just a lot of like other stuff coming up. But you start week 2 off with a huge mental draw towards the home and the family to like an extreme. So, it could just be like something random happens at your house, like you're not home and like there's someone there who needs to work on your house like immediately or something like that. We'll see. But the new moon in Taurus is really going to, that's when you'll be able to at least feel a little bit more grounded and get your schedule a little bit more leveled out. Like if things have been a little bit, crazy, getting a lot of, trying to get a sturdy schedule going, but having problems pop up here and there, the new moon in Taurus will really allow you to get much more stable, much more grounded in that term of your schedule, how you're communicating, all that stuff. As Mercury trines Saturn, you're going to feel much more comfortable and comfortable in your zone, like in your own home, in your private spaces. And I think that comfortability is going to really help you understand things better. Like it's like once things are feng shuied the right way, then it's not so stressful, and you can kind of understand, again, get some more mental clarity, get some of that zen that I think you're looking for. But then lo and behold, Jupiter enters Pisces, enters your first house. And the immense opportunities and abundance that next year really has for you, specifically 2022, really starts to show up. Like you baked cookies, you started baking cookies back in Jupiter was in Sagittarius, and now we're starting to smell them and they're getting ready. Also with Jupiter going into Pisces, you're going to feel like you're coming more into yourself. Again, like the things that you, like the fruits of your labor, or what's the saying? Like, the fruits of your work, you know what I'm trying to say. Things are going to start pretty much paying off, but it's only going to be a little sliver of it. Again, you're just going to kind of smell the cookies. They're not ready yet, essentially. As Mercury enters shadow, though, that's going to be really the big thing. The context of the retrograde is really going to begin to show where it seems like a bigger understanding and a change is going to happen in the home and the family life. At the end of week 2, once Mercury enters shadow, that's where you really want to pay attention to the home family living situation, because something about that's going to be reevaluated and come back up again here in the next couple weeks. So again, week 2 is pretty great, but week 3 is, I don't think week 3 is all that great. Starting the week off, with Venus trine Saturn, that's going to allow some really good connections happening in private. Especially with like family members, living situation, just being able to like enjoy those areas a little bit more, and things feeling a little bit more stable. As the sun enters Gemini, though, the light is really going to get shown much more on family, living situation, of course, because that's been a thing that's going on. But of course, there's going to be some type of kind of challenge with these new opportunities and the living situation. A challenge with where to integrate things. And eclipse season's here by the time the sun goes into Gemini too. So you're going to start seeing things really ramp up in this area for you. Mercury is also going to square Neptune in week 3. And as Mercury squares Neptune, that's really going to kick off the confusion and the uncertainty with the self and the home. So the big thing is try not to make decisions and have expectations when you don't have a clear path forward. There's going to be a lot of confusion though. Just expect to get a bunch of information and things happening that just really confuse you and throws you off. So it's kind of like you're just going to go through, if you drink too much alcohol, you're drunk. There's no sobering up really fast, right? You got to deal with the consequences of that. But in that sense, it's at one point you eventually get sober, and at one point things won't be like that. The way I would look at this is just don't get your head too wrapped up into it, because I think it can be really confusing and overwhelming. But at the end of week 3, Saturn stations retrograde. And that sense of self-isolation, the alienation, having to do more on your own, all of the harder, more darker sides of Saturn, the more heavier weight of that responsibility really is going to set in, and the duties that requires will show up. So I think you're going to feel more alone at this time, and I don't know how well you'll deal with that, even though you'll be enjoying your private areas and your while the home and that situation is much more comfortable. It's a good thing that you're comfortable because you're going to be there for a minute, if that makes sense. We get to week 4, and week 4 is really where things get interesting. Things really change because we start the week off with the total lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, which pretty much means for you something along the lines of your careers being highlighted, but it's more than likely it's what's holding you back is being highlighted, or it's possibly an old target, an old vision that you were going for, an old aim you were going for is no longer the goal in mind. And now that you have a different goal, now that you have a different target, you need to change your aim. And I think this eclipse is really going to highlight that of kind of you need to change course a little bit. It's not necessarily bad, but I think this is where a lot of the acceptance is, and this is an eclipse too. This is kind of just random things happening, and of course, this is everything in Gemini, so this has to do with the living situation, the home. But anyway, Venus is also going to square Neptune in week 4, which is going to make you feel very overstimulated at the home, maybe needing to turn off your phone, put it on airplane mode, or put it away from your bed. Venus in the 4th, squaring Neptune in the 1st, just you maybe also get out a little bit. Maybe it might be nice to walk around your home, not just stay inside. That might be just kind of too much. But as Venus conjoins Mercury, which mind you, Venus is going to conjoin Mercury, as Mercury then begins to go retrograde, you're going to really start to really reconsider and go over all of this new information and all of this stuff that's been happening in the home and the family life. This is where it gets all addressed. This is where it gets maintained. This is a Venus conjoining Mercury. So there's something good happening, right? There's some type of connection that's wanting to happen. Mercury just has to renegotiate the deal or renegotiate the terms, or there's some sort of, switch. The other thing too with Mercury squaring Neptune is there's going to be a misunderstanding of some sort. So by the time we get to the Mercury retrograde, all of the stuff that's been building up, you just get to go over again. So maybe again, if you have a pipe break or something like that, and they go and fix it, maybe it's not all the way fixed and they have to come back in. But anyway, you're going to start to really reconsider all that stuff and go over all that new information that's been happening there. Mars is going to trine Neptune, which pretty much means you'll be really using, with Mars in Cancer, be recreational, be procreative. Your self-expression is going to be really in tune. And the Mars trine Neptune is really going to help, your creativity and overall self-expression, give yourself avenues for healing and nurturing and just feeling good, feeling nourished, which I think is going to give you some much needed juice in terms of all of the crazy stuff that's happening this month for you. But really that's May. once we get into June, of course, a lot more things happen, a lot more things change for you guys. But May seems like a really critical month for you guys. So with that being said, I'll be seeing you next time.